Rodrigo Duterte welcomed the arrival of Sinovac.
Dumami pa ang mga Pilipinong gustong magpabakuna.
Barangada ng COVID vaccination.
Yung food court na ito, open na rin bukas.
The whole community will be there.
Na nakatulong sa pagbaba ng mga kaso, ito ang bakuna.
The Philippines College of Physicians invites you to its 25th Mid-Year Convention, hosted by the Central Luzon chapter. In this era of integrating virtual and face-to-face methods, learn on how we can move forward without compromising our practice of medicine. Join us in the 25th Mid-Year Face-to-Face with limited Zoom link convention. Let us learn more practical approaches to relevant and diverse issues in internal medicine with a renewed perspective. Interesting topics await you. On November 18 to 19, 2022. Save the date. See you at the premier convention facility in Central Luzon, Subic Bay Freeport Zone at the Subic Bay Exhibition and Convention Center. Don't be left out. Register now. See you there.
Discover a renewed internist perspective. The PCP Central Luzon invites you to the 25th PCP Mid-Year Convention, happening on November 18 to 19, 2022 at the Subic Bay Exhibition Convention Center. Guess what? We're doing it face-to-face with limited Zoom link. So what are you waiting for? Register now and beat the early bird promo. Register before October 15 and avail of the following discounted prices. Registration is for free for the following members. Here's a quick guide on how you can register. Using your Google or Safari, search for the PCP website and look for the Mid-Year Convention online registration system. Or you can just click the link or scan the QR code found in our poster. Wait to be redirected in the online registration system. Fill up the following information and choose your payment category. Regular rates apply after October 15. You can pay your registration fee over the counter at Philippine National Bank using the following details. Or you can just pay through GCash. Log into your GCash account, tap bills, look for the Philippine College of Physicians name, and key in the following details. And pay. Send your proof of payment to the following email address. Now you're registered. It's as easy as that. So, come and join us at the 25th PCP Mid-Year Convention. Let's all learn and experience Subic Bay.
Iba na kasi ang panahon ngayon. Pakiramdam mo, naglalakad kang pauwi ng hating gabi at kinakabahan ka. Yun bang kahit anong ingat mo, anytime, pwede kang matiyempuhan ng masasamang loob.
Tuwing lalabas ka ng bahay, ang dami mong iniisip na pwedeng mangyari. Para bang nasa gitna ka ng dilim. At nagdarasal ka na lang na sana may proprotekta sa'yo kung sakasakali.
Ang pandemya ay parang isang iskinita na kailangang daanan Alam mong may nagtatago sa dilim, pero wala kang nakikita. Puno ka lagi ng pangamba. Pero may liwanag na naghihintay. May proteksyon laban sa COVID-19. May maaasahan kang backup. It's time to vac up. Oras na para magpa-COVID-19 vaccine booster for backup protection, control, and prevention. Para sa mga 5 taong gulang at pataas, eligible na kayo para sa first booster shot kung nakumpleto nyo na ang inyong vaccine primary series. If you are a senior citizen or a frontline health worker who is 18 years old or above and have completed your first booster, you are eligible for a second booster shot ayon sa Philippine Department of Health. Ang COVID-19 vaccine boosters ay nagbibigay ng karagdagang proteksyon na maaaring humina na ang bisa mula ng inyong huling vaccination. Booster shots are effective in helping prevent serious illness, hospitalization, and even death. So, stay up to date with your COVID-19 vaccination. Kasama na dito ang booster shots. Magtanong sa inyong doktor o barangay clinic kung ano ang naaangkop na COVID-19 vaccine at tamang panahon para sa inyo. Sabay-sabay nating lakbayin ang daang patungo sa malusog, malakas at magandang kinabukasan. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Help control and prevent the spread of COVID-19. It's time to vac up.
President Rodrigo Duterte welcomed the arrival of Sinovac.
Dumami pa ang mga Pilipinong gustong magpabakuna.
Barangada ng COVID vaccination.
Yung food court na ito, open na rin bukas.
The whole community will be there.
Na nakatulong sa pagbaba ng mga kaso, ito ang bakuna.
The Philippines College of Physicians invites you to its 25th Mid-Year Convention, hosted by the Central Luzon chapter. In this era of integrating virtual and face-to-face methods, learn on how we can move forward without compromising our practice of medicine. Join us in the 25th Mid-Year Face-to-Face with limited Zoom link convention. Let us learn more practical approaches to relevant and diverse issues in internal medicine with a renewed perspective. Interesting topics await you. On November 18 to 19, 2022. Save the date. See you at the premier convention facility in Central Luzon, Subic Bay, Freeport Zone at the Subic Bay Exhibition and Convention Center. Don't be left out. Register now. See you there.
Discover a renewed internist perspective. The PCP Central Luzon invites you to the 25th PCP New Year Convention, happening on November 18 to 19, 2022 at the Subic Bay Exhibition Convention Center. Guess what? We're doing it face-to-face with limited Zoom link. So what are you waiting for? Register now and beat the early bird promo. Register before October 15 and avail of the following discounted prices. Registration is for free for the following members. Here's a quick guide on how you can register. Using your Google or Safari, search for the PCP website and look for the Mid-Year Convention online registration system. Or you can just click the link or scan the QR code found in our poster. Wait to be redirected to the online registration system. Fill up the following information and choose your payment category. Regular rates apply after October 15. You can pay your registration fee over the counter at Philippine National Bank using the following details. Or you can just pay through GCash. Log into your GCash account, tap bills, look for the Philippine College of Physicians name, and key in the following details. And pay. Send your proof of payment to the following email address. Now you're registered. It's as easy as that. So, come and join us at the 25th PCP Mid-Year Convention. Let's all learn and experience Subic Bay.
Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of our Lord. Our dearest Heavenly Father, thank you for making all things possible. We are grateful for all the blessings you are pouring upon each one of us, despite the challenges we are all currently facing. Thank you for blessing us today with the wonderful opportunity to meet virtually and learn together in the awesomely exciting webinar. May your blessings of wisdom and guidance be upon us, all through the sharing and impartation of knowledge and skills by our resource speakers, facilitators, and moderators. May all of us learn together, upgrade our competencies, and capacitate us to be the help in the development of our learners' lives and communities in the spirit of your love and generosity. May we now humbly commit every part of this webinar to you as we all bring you the glory, honor, and praises for your kingdom and holy name's sake. All this we pray in the precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Through the dreadful darkness, we shall be the light and lead a path to wisdom. Our will to be our light. To those in pain and suffering, we shall hear a call. With us to care and comfort,
the Philippine College of Physicians, through the Committee on Media Communication and Health Forum, presents its bi-monthly lay forum to promote the advocacies and mission of the college and its component and affiliate societies. An avenue of accurate and up-to-date conversations with the media and the general public, with timely and diverse topics covering vital public health and medical information, straight from the experts. In a platform that is convenient, accessible, and highly engaging. Welcome to the PCP Health Forum.
To our viewers and participants of today's forum. Climate change is not unique to any continent or region. It is a global problem. The more that we learn about its nature, impacts, and risks, the more we can live conscientiously caring about our environment and others. The Philippines is listed 5th among nations most affected by climate change from 1998 to 2017, according to a 2019 Global Climate Risk Index by German Watch. And in 2019, a global survey on climate change revealed that 75% of Filipinos say that climate change will significantly impact their lives. Now, let us dig deeper on how climate change and health are interrelated. How can we create climate-resilient development pathways and promote better response to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? More so, how can we cascade this concept to the masses? Today, the doctor wears his hat as an advocate of health and environment. And to welcome everyone, let us call on one of the champions of clean air, Dr. Imelda Mateo, the incumbent secretary of the PCP Board of Regents.
Maganda at maliwalas na umaga po sa ating lahat. I welcome all members of the PCP, all the physicians, our media partners, and all our friends attending this health forum. The topic for today's session is very close to my heart, being a health and safe environment advocate as well. And as physicians and health advocates, it is vital that we understand the health risks of climate change in this part of the globe, especially now amidst the pandemic. We have to learn to speak with confidence about climate change, its health impacts, and actions your patients, colleagues, and communities can take towards a healthier climate. We must take a leadership role in inspiring health facilities to be sustainable, climate resilient, and pandemic prepared, and of course, promote health and climate resilience through actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as a health professional, a health institution, an organization, or as a community. We must seek to utilize digital spaces to mobilize the healthcare sector, gather support from the climate advocates, amplify our messages of transformation, spread information to educate the broader society, and influence decision makers, and to demand social justice and health equity. As we promote climate action and informed decisions, it is important for healthcare providers to be familiar with and inform patients about the health impacts of climate change and to help patients reduce associated risk. Recognition that human health can be affected by a wide range of ecological disruptions consequent upon climate change, while a recent development reflecting the breadth and sophistication of modern scientific knowledge. Nevertheless, the simpler idea that human health and disease are linked to climate probably predates written history. The Greek physician Hippocrates, about 400 days, related epidemics to seasonal weather changes, writing that physicians should have due regard to the seasons of the year and the diseases which they produce, and to the states of the wind peculiar to each country and the qualities of its waters. He exhorts them to take note of the waters which people use, whether they be marshy and soft or hard and running from elevated and rocky situations. And then, if saltish and unfit for cooking, and to observe the localities of towns of the surrounding country, whether they are low or high, hot or cold, wet or dry, and of the diet and regimen of the inhabitants. So there we see, even Hippocrates has predicted and has written the importance of climate and environment on human health. And health is a human right. And for that reason, making the case for urgent action on climate change to protect the health of this generation and the next remains as urgent as ever. So thank you, and I know we will be learning a lot and picking up pearls and tips from our well-known and adept speaker, our very own Dr. Tando. Thank you once again. Let's all enjoy while listening. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mateo. And for today, we are so blessed to have with us an activist, no? Isang aktivista na tumatayo para sa ating kalusugan at ating environment. And he is the founding chair and current advisor of the Philippine College of Physicians Climate Change Committee, Environment and Health. He's a past president of the PCP Eastern Visayas chapter. He's a founder of the Green Circle, People's Organization for Conservation and Sustainability. He's a PCP Distinguished Fellow in the year 2020, PCP Presidential Awardee for Excellence in Climate Change Advocacy for 3 years, 2016, 2019, and 2020. He is a climate reality leader. Let us all welcome Dr. Jonathan Moses Advok to enlighten us about climate change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gwen D. Agra, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you also, Dr. Mateo. And please give me 2 seconds to share my screen. Am I being heard clearly?
Yes, Doctor.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you very much. So greetings, everyone. And let me thank and congratulate the initiators and convener of this meaningful assembly, PCP Media Communications Committee Chair Dr. Ginger Samonte, ma'am, good morning. Co-chair and moderator now, Dr. Gwen D. Agra. PCP Committee on Climate Change, Environment and Health Chair, Dr. Paula Santamaria and team who are online. PCP President, Dr. Diana Payawal, again, Dr. Mateo Secretary, to all in attendance virtually, isang magandang umaga sa ating lahat. So the bulk of my talk will come from these sources, and I would like to promote our PCP primer, Climate Change and Health. This is a primer for the climate change curriculum in a medical and tertiary education in the Philippines, of course, Climate Reality Project, and the summary for policymakers assessment report 6 of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So I always start any talk, my talk, I always start it with the basic science of climate change. I believe it will set a strong foundation of resolve and will establish a platform on why this issue is urgent and why this science is actually disturbing. On December 7, 1972, on the last of the Apollo missions, on the way back from the moon, this beautiful image of the Earth was taken at the time when the sun was lined up with the moon and the Earth. So we get a spectacular image of the full disk of the Earth for the first time, 1972. It was completely illuminated, and this is the most commonly published picture in all of history. It's beautiful. And so the basics of the climate crisis, they're fairly simple. Most of you here know them very well. The Earth gets its energy from the sun, which comes in the form of sunlight. Solar irradiation in the form of light waves passes through the atmosphere. And most of this radiation is actually trapped by the natural greenhouse gas layer. The thin blue line there, that's the natural greenhouse gas layer. It's provided by nature. And that's a good thing. It keeps temperature within healthy and reasonable boundaries for the forms of life that have been created and have evolved here. So some of this outgoing infrared radiation is trapped by the Earth's atmosphere. It warms us. But the problem is basically this. We are making that thin blue line, that greenhouse gas layer, a lot thicker. And when it gets thicker, more of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped and a lot of more is trapped. So as the CO2 concentration increases, more of the outgoing infrared radiation is trapped. And that's what capturing heat. Heat energy drives temperature up. It causes all of the consequences, including the second order, the third order consequences that we will be talking about today. So the main reason why the thin blue line is getting thicker is that it gets thicker because we are spewing 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of atmosphere every day, as if it is an open sewer for all of us. So we discharge around 162 million tons of the man-made global warming pollution, and we're treating that thin shell of atmosphere again as an open sewer. It's so thin. If you could drive an automobile from a highway all the way up, you could reach the atmosphere around 5 to 10 minutes. And all of this greenhouse gas pollution spewed from the earth is below that level. Beyond that, we can't breathe anymore without oxygen tanks. And so that's the key part. And we are using it as an open sewer. So where it is all coming from, the 162 million tons of global warming pollution? Well, all kinds of activities, every minute, every hour, every day. It includes agriculture, burning forests, industries, road transport, melting of the permafrost. It contributes to all this 162 million, including mining and all these activities. But the one source that is by far most important is our dependence on fossil fuels. We're talking about diesel, we're talking about petroleum, we're talking about natural gas. And the fact after World War II, as you can see over here, we began a tremendous increase in the amount of coal, oil, and gas being burned around the world. And that's really the main cause. And since the global warming pollution accumulates over time, the average residence of CO2 molecule is about 100 years. It stays in the atmosphere for 100 years. And some other greenhouse gases that are in there, in smaller volumes, it will last for thousands of years. But the average residence time is 100 years. So the total amount of accumulated global warming pollution is trapping as much as extra heat energy every day, as if we're releasing around 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding on the Earth every 24 hours. That's a lot of energy coming from the heat. But heat is the biggest consequence. And you can see that the global temperatures have been going up quite dramatically. And even in 2020, according to NASA, it was the hottest year ever measured with instruments. And in fact, 19 of the 20 hottest centuries ever measured have been in the past 20 years. We're living it now. And the 7 of the hottest of all have been at least in the last 7 years. And so today, I will brief you on some of the major points of the 6th assessment report of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, what we call AR6 in short. So this IPCC was created to provide policymakers with regular scientific assessments on climate change. It's available online. You can download it. Its implications, potential risks, as well as to put forward adaptation, and mitigation options. So last August 9, 2021, they released AR6, and this is the summary for policymakers. So in the AR6, there are graphics, there are tables to aid us in the understanding of the impact of climate change. It says that human influence over here, it has warmed the climate at a rate that is unprecedented in the last 2,000 years. So here in the first panel, you can see the changes in global surface temperature reconstructed from paleoclimate archives with solid gray line, and from direct observation, solid black line from 1850 to 2020, both relative to 1850 to 1900 and decadally averaged. So notice that steep climb over here of temperature from 1850 to 2020 compared to prior 100 years. And it was in this period that we had the Industrial Revolution. So panel B, these are the changes in global surface temperature over the past 170 years. Relative to 1850 to 1900, again, annually average. The temperature responds to both human and natural drivers in this brown here, and to only compared natural drivers, solar and volcanic activity green over here. So there's a difference between the human and natural drivers compared to only natural drivers over here. So in the AR6, in that summary, they plotted the variables that are important for us to understand. So the variables of the AR6 included greenhouse gases, global temperatures, and we all know that when we talk about greenhouse gases, we mean CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and comparing it with AR5, which was around a decade ago, or around 8 years. With AR6, there is a tremendous increase as far as the parts per million accumulation in the atmosphere. So this resulted in an increase of global temperature, increasing of around 0.78 from 1850 to 2012 compared to pre-industrial levels. And now at 2020, we are up by 1.09 degrees Celsius. And so to make it simple, the surface of the Earth has warmed by 1.09 degrees Celsius since 1890. So far, that is the latest. Compared to in the pre-industrial times, the Earth has warmed by 1.09 degrees Celsius since 1890. And that's what we call global warming. It's warming the surface of the Earth. And the problem is, with this warming, it has an impact to the climate. And the impact of global warming is not just linear, it is systemic. From heat extremes, wildfires, super typhoons, all these are felt around the globe. You see your super typhoons, heat extremes, wildfires. And in our country, news like this is not uncommon. We feel this during summer months with heat index hitting 41.2 degrees Celsius in Isabela and even 52 degrees Celsius in Dagupan, in Butuan, in Mindanao as well. But around the globe, here's a warming from a city in Iran not many years ago. It reached a heat index of around 74 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine 74 degrees Celsius? Nobody can live outdoors for more than a few hours in those kind of conditions. Now, these areas around the world, painted in red, this is not the hottest region in the world. But if you look at the map of the really hot areas around the world, look at the Persian Gulf and the North Africa. There have been 4 locations where they have been above 50 degrees Celsius. And these temperatures are extremely dangerous. Iran, Kuwait, Oman, and UAE. And even in the West, in fact, most of the American West has been a prolonged heat wave, like in Nevada, early part of the summer of 2021, with no relief immediately in sight. Normal warming has impact on the climate. And of course, this has impact also on the glaciers that provides water to countries supported by it. This is a glacier in Peru. It was in 1978. And now half of it is actually gone. So this is also a glacier in Jacamba, Peru. Okay, comparing it 1980, 2003 with global warming. It lost their surface and air last year, all because of normal warming of the Earth. But beyond that, apart from that, there is an impact to the climate. And this is what we are going to talk today. Now, abnormal warming affects the climate. And United Nations Framework on Climate Change defines climate change as a change in climate, which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere, and which is in addition to natural climate variability it observed over comparable time periods. So we're not talking here of an everyday issue or a weekly or a yearly. We're talking here about decades different. So that makes different from weather. Weather is variable day to day. Climate, it means decadal difference. So in this picture, this is Kiribati, which is the first nation to purchase land in another country to house its climate refugees, because of sea level rise. And as far as AR5 and AR6, again, is concerned, talking about global temperatures and high extremes. For global temperatures, AR6 pronounced that it's unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and land. And for heat extremes, it is high confidence that human-induced climate change is the main driver of these changes in the heat extremes. So talking about the heat trap in the atmosphere, as I've mentioned a while ago, even more dramatic is that when we look at this on a global basis, what we have been looking is just 7% of the trapped heat that goes into the air temperature. 93% of this extra heat will not stay in the atmosphere, but it will also go into the oceans. And the ocean temperature have been setting records almost every single year. And there was another all-time high temperature record in 2020. And this ocean warming, being the driver for stronger and frequent cyclones, have become more common. It's extremely likely, AR6 said, that human influence is the main driver of ocean warming. And with this ocean warming, it is likely that the global proportion of major Category 3 to 5 tropical cyclones occurrence has increased over the last 4 decades. And it is not uncommon. We observe it even here in the Philippines and even here in Metro Manila, just like last month for Carding. Well, Typhoon Odette, an example. It has gone rapid intensification, which was not previously in forecast. And while track has significantly changed, the intensity forecast has been increased dramatically. And Typhoon Odette actually changed or was categorized from Category 1 to 5 in one single day from Center for Disaster Philanthropy. So it strengthened from Category 1 to 5 in one day. And it was the ocean's temperature that actually was the culprit for this. It means that the people were not able to have enough time to evacuate. So with Odette, from Surigao to Leyte to Bohol, Dinagat, Cebu, Palawan, devastation was all over. Again, talking about global warming and the heat trap in the atmosphere, this warmer air can hold a lot more water vapor. It holds more moisture, and when the oceans gets warming, as we have seen, they evaporate more moisture. Now, when the air temperature goes up 1 degree Celsius, that increases its capacity for holding water vapor by 7%. So 1 degree, 7% increase in the atmosphere, in the absorption of water vapor. And we have already about 5% more water vapor over the oceans in the world than we did just 30 years ago. So what is now the consequences of more water vapor in the atmosphere? Well, basically the downpours get bigger. So I would say it again, the downpours get bigger. And this is all over the world. There's an image taken in Texas in 2021, really extraordinary happening. That is a rain bomb. And globally, even in the Philippines, floods, extreme rainfall events, they now occur 4 times more often. So not just the heat, now there is precipitation. And even in India in 2020, the 2020 monsoon rainfall in India was 50% higher than normal. And that cost more than 1,900 lives. And that was the deadliest climate-related disaster in 2020. And if you take all of the different extreme weather events and lump them up together, the insurance companies will show you that the cost is rising every year because of the climate crisis. Now, this is now becoming a trend, extremely burdensome and expensive, and they are predicting it's going to get worse. Here now is AR6, and we're talking about floods, rainfall. It says in AR6 that as far as precipitation overland is concerned, it is likely that human influence contributed to the pattern of observed precipitation changes. And with these rainfall extremes, the frequency and intensity of heavy precipitation events have increased since the 1950s up to now. And most of the land area for which observational data were taken for trend analysis with high confidence on this data. So again, shifting gears from heat, precipitation, we are going from rain bombs and downpours and flooding to mudslides to another effect, which is the same heat that brings the water vapor out of the ocean. It also sucks out the topsoil, making droughts worse. And in AR6, regarding drought, they said that the human-induced climate change has contributed to increases in agriculture and ecological droughts in some regions due to increased land evapotranspiration with medium confidence. And with the impact of the global warming, there could be sea level rise, and this coming from the melting of the ice sheets, and of course the glaciers, as I have mentioned. And the average sea level rise was around 1.3 mm per year from 1901 to 1971, going up to 1.9 in 1971 to 2006, and now it's 3.7 mm per year between 2006 and 2018 with AR6 with high confidence. And going back again to drought, the cost of drought in Brazil last year was around 3 billion in damages. And in mainland China, around 2.4 million people in the lower Yangtze Basin were still affected by the drought here and earlier in 2020. Now, going back to the United States, Hoover Dam, you have been there. This is Lake Mead, which is the largest reservoir in the United States. It's never been low since they started filling in the Hoover Dam in 1930s. They may have, for first time in history, a forced water reallocation in this region. And also in California, here's one of the largest storage reservoirs in Lake Oroville. And you can see for yourself how far down that part of it it's actually at present. So this is also a glacier in southern Argentina in 1928. This is a big lake. This was used in an image in some movies, and comparing it in 1928 now in 2014, the glacier, Uppsala Glacier, is now a lake because of global warming. So let me show you a simple cartoon video of how actually global warming and ocean's temperatures actually contributed to the melting of ice sheets.
Ice sheets rest on the ocean floor and can melt from both above and below sea level.
We have warm waters that are near those ice sheets. And if those warm waters actually touch the marine ice sheets melt, and you have big changes in sea level.
As the marine ice sheets melt, the land-based ice behind them moves more quickly toward the sea. And this poses the greatest threat for rapid sea level rise.
And with sea level rises are the top 10 cities at risk from sea level rise in 2017. And these are our neighbors. You can show here, it's Bangkok, Shanghai, of course, Vietnam, Dhaka, and of course, Manila and Cebu is at spare. So when temperatures get hotter, the drought gets worse and the fire gets worse. And the relationship between drought and fire, temperature and fire is very clear to see. And of course, California, again, has really been through it. And in 2021, last year, the fire season in California started earlier than the previous record-breaking season. And by the end of last year, all of the fires, 8,500 fires in California had burned around 1.7 million hectares, had destroyed 10,500 structures and killed a lot of people. Sorry. And by the way, the smoke that comes from wildfire, it causes more hospitalizations than any other form of air pollution. We have a problem in air pollution, but it is actually magnified with wildfires. And a lot of people have been affected by it. In our local data with Department of Health with air pollution in 2018 pre-pandemic, ER visits are actually noted to increase dramatically with hot and dry months. Even parts of Colombia, they suffered from smoke coming from over the Venezuelan fires, and that was in 2020. And of course, this has been a long national security issue. In the United States, the Department of Defense for a long time has warned that the security consequences, including food shortages, pandemic diseases spread, and refugees. We're short of time. We cannot expound all of this. However, I would like to expound on some global systems that are vulnerable to climate. Now, I would like to emphasize on the impact to health. And it actually has been called the biggest threat to global health in this century. That's from Lancet. It's the #1 health issue in the world today, and according to the Lancet Commission and a growing number of doctors. This issue has been declared a medical emergency by a number of expert groups, and this is the Lancet, again, one of the leading medical journals in the world. And actually, climate has many impacts on health. And we're going to take them briefly one by one, because with climate crisis, this has impacted all of these subsets. And we're talking about infectious disease. We're talking about the impact to water supply, mental health, allergens, heat stress, air pollution, food, and extreme weather events. Let's talk about heat stress. Now, during the postgraduate course of H.B. Kelly Heart and Vascular Institute, I actually talk on the impact of the climate crisis and cardiovascular health. And I would like to share the comment of Michael Hadley, a cardiologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. He said that heat waves can trigger heart attacks and strokes, with an estimated about 93,000 cardiovascular deaths caused by heat exposure in 2019. And it is more important to think about the most vulnerable. We're talking about the poor, the elderly, the homeless, agricultural workers who are in the field, other workers that work outdoors, infants and children, those with pre-existing medical conditions, comorbidities, and even the mentally ill. All of these groups are especially vulnerable. This is the summer in Bihar, India in 2019. We saw this tragic outbreak of encephalitis, and this was connected to the climate-related heat wave in Bihar, India. In fact, extreme heat events in any country cause more deaths in all of the countries, all others combined, and even in the United States. Now, we'll talk a little on air pollution, but this will be discussed heavily in the next health forum by Dr. Santa Maria. But the one that actually gets little attention is this, and compared to the number of people affected, This is this issue. It's important to just circle back and remember that when fossil fuels are burned, whether it's coal, oil, or gas, or for that matter, there are different kinds of pollution that's released. At the same time that the CO2 in the troposphere causes climate crisis, the particulate pollution comes in the exact same combustion process. And even more than COVID, worldwide air pollution kills 9 million people every year. And both factors affect the food we eat, the water we drink, the air that we breathe, and the weather that we experience. Interestingly, with climate reality, they just discovered that when pregnant women are exposed to air pollution, it's linked to the later appearance of high blood pressure in their children. And of course, the children are a vulnerable group. They can cause mental and cognitive deficits, and even in children. You remember that there was air pollution and air pollution problem in China. In 2016, look at this. These are actually elementary pupils taking the examination. The headmaster of the school was suspended after 400 students were made to take an exam outside in the dangerous mud conditions in China. So, and it's a shame also that because we've seen tripling of mercury levels in the near surface areas of the oceans from air pollution, it's why people are advised not to eat fish and enjoy marine life because of mercury poisoning. So let's talk about infectious disease. Now, Andrew Bobson, the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at Princeton University, said that climate change is disrupting the natural ecosystems in a way that is making life better for infectious disease. It's making it more favorable for infectious disease. And all the vectors of diseases, whether it could be rats, mosquitoes, ticks, they are more dangerous with the climate crisis. And we're seeing tropical diseases move to higher latitudes because more and more ice sheets are actually melted. Air travel also has to do a lot to this, but the climate crisis is changing the places where these diseases take root. Before, they would just be at the equatorial region, but now they're actually in the temperate regions. And while these have become found in the tropics, now they are found in other areas. So we're talking about Zika virus, dengue fever, of course, chikungunya, West Nile virus, and of course, Rift Valley fever. And according to the United States Agency for International Development, nearly 75% of all new emerging or re-emerging diseases, including COVID, that affects humans of the 21st century, they originate in the animals. These are zoonotic. Diseases like AIDS, SARS, H5N1, Ebola, avian flu, H1N1, and now COVID-19. And while the current coronavirus outbreak originated in wild animal in Wuhan, China, more and more wild animals, they come in contact with humans, often because of deforestation. So as deforestation is a driver to the climate crisis, we need to protect our forests and plant trees to expand the carbon sink. Dengue fever showed up in Tokyo in around 2014. And even in the Philippines, it's now becoming endemic. And every year we have a problem with dengue, and it's true to this present time. And this has been attributed also to the changes in the climate. In Brazil in 2019, they have terrible yellow fever outbreak, which have also been connected to abnormal warming. So mosquitoes moved to higher elevations with climate crisis. Now, before 1970, while the glaciers were up, cold temperatures caused freezing at high elevations. They limited the mosquito-borne diseases, and mainly plants to lower altitude, equatorial. We're talking about dengue fever, malaria. However, today, with the increased warmth and melting of ice, has caused mountain glaciers to shrink in the tropics and temperate regions. And some of these mosquitoes are actually moving upward. Some mosquitoes, mosquito-borne diseases, and plants have migrated upward. So in the West, mosquito season is growing already from around 81 to 111 days. And in 2016, if you remember, we had a problem with Zika virus. It was all over the headlines, even in Latin America. So as we talk about the vector of Zika, I'm going to spend a moment on this because it's really a concern of the doctors and health professionals. So as the temperature warms, the range expands as more locations develop a mosquito-friendly climate. There are more days when mosquitoes are active and able to reproduce. The mosquitoes' reproduction rate increases, so more generations are born each year. The mosquitoes' metabolism accelerates, causing them to feed and bite more often. And of course, the virus incubates more quickly inside the mosquito, increasing the time available for transmission. So that's what happens with Zika. Now, Aedes aegypti is responsible for Zika virus. It carries the Zika virus. This is the normal life cycle of Aedes aegypti mosquito. It carries the Zika virus. And if you see this life cycle of Zika, of Aedes aegypti, it goes from eggs to larva to a mature mosquito to when they bite somebody that has a Zika. But when the virus incubates, when the virus incubates inside the mosquito, it becomes infectious. However, but incubation in normal, without warming, the incubation takes so long that the mosquito's life cycle often ends before it is able to bite. Hence, before they are not able to bite humans because it's only about 14 to 16 days and this Aedes aegypti is dead. So with warmer temperatures, Aedes aegypti life cycle is actually different. So but now new conditions, it happens that it goes from larva to the egg. It happens more quickly. It goes to mature mosquitoes more quickly, and the incubation rate, this is now the big deal, it happens much faster. So the number of days that is biting as an infectious mosquito and spreading the disease is much, much longer compared to previous decades. And that is why now we have the problem with Zika, because even before the mosquito dies in the 60th day, it is able to bite humans and spread Zika. So in August 12, 2016, the US declared the Zika outbreak in Puerto Rico to be a public emergency. And during that time, up to 50 pregnant women every day were infected with the Zika virus in Puerto Rico, according to the Centers for Disease Control. And if you remember that news, the most feared complication of Zika virus infection in pregnancy is actually microcephaly of the newborn when the virus hits the neuroprogenitor cells of the fetus. So climate change also increases the risk of many waterborne infectious diseases. We're talking about cholera, dysentery, hepatitis A, typhoid fever, E. coli, Cryptosporidium campylobacter. In the US, around 2/3 of the waterborne disease outbreaks come in immediate aftermath of these rain bombs that contaminate water supplies with diseases causing agents. And cholera is an example of a disease that spreads more rapidly, in warmer weather. And the so-called brain-eating amoeba that you see in the news, warmer temperatures may also expand Naegleриa's range. And we also talk about Vibrio bacteria. Shellfish can become infected with Vibrio bacteria in warmer water temperatures. And the warmer the sea surface, the more of these Vibrios are actually spread. And one of the most common flesh-eating bacteria is a Vibrio bacteria that can cause necrotizing fasciitis, which is now also an aftermath of or a consequence of the climate crisis. There are also global systems that are vulnerable to climate, and this time on food supply and nutrition. So the nutritional quality of our food is actually affected with the climate crisis. So this is an important fact that has only been focused intensely. You see, all the food crops that we have today, all the ones you had to eat today probably were carefully and patently selected by Stone Age women before. But now, that gives rise to our civilization, that we are living those conditions. A lot of these plants are suffering from heat stress compared to the previous years or decades when these crops were actually decided to be the staple food. And they are now beginning to measure that with each degree of warming, a decrease in the yield of these plants, which are actually primary crops, are actually affected, especially corn, and of course, rice. And with the rising concentration of CO2, it's threatening global nutrition by reducing the levels of the micronutrients in food crops. And we talk about micronutrients, we are talking about zinc, iron, copper, magnesium, and calcium could decrease around 5 to 10% in staple crops as CO2 levels rise. And so, my dear ladies and gentlemen, today, the atmospheric CO2 levels is all-time high. What is livable is 350 parts per million. But according to NASA, in a study of Joshua Lafner's study, even despite lockdowns of COVID, overall, the atmospheric CO2 levels increased from 411.98 parts per million, that's pre-pandemic, December 2019. Now it even went up to 416.71 parts per million. Again, what is livable is 350 parts per million. And this is often referred to as the physiologic threshold. So all of these consequences and more, they are caused by the climate crisis. The World Economic Forum for 4 years in a row has said that it's the #1 risk in the global economy. So if we think about the cost of carbon, a lot of things can be discussed. We're looking at this, all of this red paint over here. We just even touch about infectious disease, sea level rise, storm damage, and drought. But there are a lot of things that we can talk about that, and much, much more. In fact, it's now considered to be the #1 threat, not just to health, but to global economy. And so going back to AR6, the key point is, it is a statement of the fact that we cannot be any more certain. It is unequivocal and undisputable that humans are warming the planet. And every government agreed to that statement, according to Prof. Ed Hawkins. So with AR6 projections, what now? What now? So the best estimate that the world will pass or temporarily reach 1.5 degrees Celsius. That is our goal by 2030. We should keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. But the best estimate that the world will pass, if we will not provide solutions, it's somewhere between 2030 and 2035, depending on future emission scenarios. So we're talking about climate projections over here, simulations over here. And what is actually disturbing is, if we will reach 1.5 by 2030, the world is expected to pass 2 degrees Celsius in emission scenarios that do not feature strong midterm mitigation, with a best estimate between the early 2040s and the early 2050s. And we do not want that. That is catastrophic. And what will happen with 2 degrees warming? Sea level will rise about 1.6 feet. It will flood coastlines and worldwide. It will include Cebu and Manila. Heat waves will intensify and could reach up to 3 months, affecting growth of staple crops, disrupting food supply chain, water supply. There will be chaos. There will be stronger and more frequent typhoons and precipitation. There will be irreversible damage to 99% of coral reefs, disrupting ecosystems, affecting 9 million species. That's really disturbing. And so we'll talk about solutions. Talking about solutions will be another topic. Of course, it's a lengthy topic, but just to make sure, to avert a climate catastrophe and reach net zero emissions by 2050, the world must rapidly phase out fossil fuel use and divest from dependence to fossil fuel use. And of course, advocate the use of clean energy, which is another topic again. So I would like to update you the power generation mix in the Philippines. That is by 2020, according to the Department of Energy. Still, we are dependent on fossil fuels, around 53%. 53% of our source of power comes from non-renewable sources. We're talking about coal and we're talking about oil. And we are actually doing good a little on our renewable energy resources, but not much. So this is the power generation mix in our country as of 2020. And our road to transition to clean energy source is challenging, actually. And as part of our commitment to the Paris Agreement, we need to expand our renewable energy source and divest from fossil fuels. Now, 4 months ago, an article was published in the British Medical Journal by cardiologist Michael Hadley, Mount Sinai Hospital, introducing a new field. It's called climate cardiology, and it's actually close to my heart. Climate cardiology is a new field in medicine. This could change the daily practice of medicine and mitigation. And it's according to Sarah Dawert of the magazine Anthropocene, published on June 7, 2022. And I would like to discuss the gist of this article published in the British Medical Journal around 4 months ago. So this is a new specialty in medicine. It is needed to tackle the many links between climate change and cardiovascular health, and simultaneously protect the planet and the patients in the future. So here are 6 interventions especially targeted to reduce CVD and mitigate climate change. So the first intervention from climate cardiology is to transition from red meat diet to plant-based diet. And what's the impact of this as far as CVD reduction is concerned? It will reduce saturated fat intake. It is healthier. And as far as climate change is concerned, it will reduce greenhouse gases from livestock. They also advocate the expansion of green spaces in residential environments. The impact of this to the cardiovascular disease is to increase physical activity among residents. And of course, the climate change, it will remove atmospheric carbon dioxide. The third is transition from vehicular to active transportation, and not just be dependent on cars using combustion engines. it will reduce air pollution exposure, which is healthier. And as far as climate change is concerned, it will reduce greenhouse gases from fossil fuel combustion. And of course, we will have to advocate transition to clean, renewable energy, just like I have mentioned. This will reduce air pollution exposure and of course, reduce greenhouse gases from fossil fuel combustion. And the fifth is to provide clean stoves for cooking, not using solid fuels. This will reduce air pollution exposure as far as reduction of CVD is concerned. And as far as climate change is concerned, this will reduce deforestation. And of course, the last is to practice resource efficiency in healthcare, which will decrease the carbon footprint of hospitals and centers. This will expand preventive medicine and reduce greenhouse gases from healthcare system. In that article, Michael Hadley, the cardiologist, proponent of this, said that transitioning to clean energy, therefore, provides the greatest opportunity to protect both planet and cardiovascular health. And I would like to echo the comment of Dhruv Kasi of Harvard Medical Boston School. He said that just as we are passionate about controlling lipids and blood pressure, we should feel passionately about controlling climate-related risks. So in our pursuit to reduce mortality by addressing risk factors for death, we must adjust our lenses and look at environmental risk for diseases. Consequently, we can sustain and preserve the planet by reducing environmental risk, and therefore everyone should and is part of the only solution. For the planet's health and yours, use heart for nature. Now, the health sector, us, whose mission is protecting and promoting health, it makes a major contribution to the climate crisis, and therefore has an important role to play in resolving it. In fact, if the health sector were a country, it would be the fifth largest emitter of carbon emissions. We are equivalent to around 2 billion metric tons of CO2 per year from facilities and hospitals, and 40% of this 2.2 billion tons comes from generation of electricity to maintain our facilities and health, and of course, centers. So what we can do as a health community, we can reduce the healthcare's climate footprint now in our hospitals, in our houses. We have to be aware about our carbon footprint. The health sector must support a societal transition to clean and renewable energy and chart the course to zero emissions healthcare by 2050. And we have to echo our voices. We have to be influencers in society. And together with other organizations like Healthcare Without Harm, we have to participate actively in forums like this. So our beloved PCP, as a socially responsible organization, we bring this issue into the doorstep of schools, universities, and homes, being responsive to the changing needs of the environment, just like what we are doing now. So we continue our climate crisis education, and up to date, today we have reached around 39,200 audience with our climate crisis lectures, and we have planted around 60,000 trees since 2014 with our November 8th yearly Day of Rising activity. So as I end, I would like to say that one of the most optimistic things in the last couple of decades was the Paris Agreement in 2015. Every nation in the world pledged to reach net zero carbon emissions by mid-century. And yes, of course, with the change of government in the US before Biden, the US killed time for about 4 years under the previous president. But on this first day of presidency for Joe Biden started the clock ticking again, and 30 days later, the mandatory waiting time, the US rejoined the Paris Agreement, and this year is the 5-year review period, and that's a good thing. So here in Manila, around the world also, alongside clean energy and other solutions, becoming more and more affordable, one of the biggest and most important stories for the movement is the turn of the masses to activism in recent years. Thank you for the word a while ago, Dr. Diagra, for the word activist. We need to be activists for this issue. And the health sector and the healthcare professionals have delivered a very strong message, leaders to COP26 in Glasgow last year. And health has never been at the center stage like it during the first week of COP26 at Glasgow last year. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, less than a decade is the window to keep the temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. And when this becomes a runaway issue, it will be irreversible. So we have to do it now. So, ladies and gentlemen, while the clock ticks, I ask you to join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices to fight for our future, to fight for the children's future, our community, and our world. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hadlock. I would like to invite the participants and the viewers over Zoom and Facebook Live to please type in your questions and comments if you have any. We can actually feel the passion there, Dr. Hadlock. The information was rather overwhelming and enlightening at the same time. And you mentioned that the Philippines actually participated in the Paris Agreement.
That's
I
true.
would like to ask, where are we now in our pledge to decrease our emission? Are we on track with what we have promised during the Paris Agreement?
Thank you very much, Dr. Gwen, for that wonderful question. I wanted really to emphasize on that. When we joined the Paris Agreement in 2015, we were lauded. We were lauded because we were one of those who were ambitious to reduce our carbon emissions, imagine by 70% by 2030. Not many actually made that commitment, but Philippines made that commitment. We're talking about reduction of carbon emissions in a business as usual scenario, meaning we don't have to cut, we don't have to close industries, we don't have to do anything, but we just have to source out differently our dependence on coal as well as in oil. For us to better understand this question, back then, we were like around 70% sourcing our energy requirement from coal and then from oil. But now we are around 52%. So we're actually moving in a correct direction, in the right direction. But if I'm going to be specific, according to Renewable Energy Network, our energy derived from renewable resources is around 7.1 gigawatts. That's for now. And for us to be able to reach our ambition about 70% reduction, we need to amplify it, and we need to ramp it up from 7.1 to around 15.3 gigawatts. That's by 2030. Now, this is not easy, because when you talk about renewable energy, we're talking about wind, we're talking about solar, we're talking about hydroelectric. And right now, the 7.1 gigawatts, majority of it comes from hydroelectric and geothermal. And for us to be able to come up with the solutions of reaching 15.3 gigawatts by 2030, we need wind, we need solar, and all these are expensive. Honestly speaking, if we're going to be straight about it, with our own resources, we cannot hit that. But in the Paris Agreement, because of climate justice, we are not much of an emitter for the CO2. Imagine, of the 162 million tons, we are just around 0.7% emitter. That's around 812,000 tons per day. US and China, 40%, it comes from them. And so the agreement in the 2015 Paris Agreement, they had to subsidize the developing nations who are receiving the brunt of the climate crisis, just like the Philippines. Now, it's all in the paper. It's in the treaty, but it's not happening. And so without climate financing, without the participation, and without these major polluters, shall I say, to be blunt about it, major polluters, China and US, without their commitment to finance us with wind, with solar, we cannot actually meet our goals by 2030. And what's wrong here is that the climate crisis is a global issue. No country can solve it alone. That's why there's a Paris Agreement. Lahat tayo dapat may gawin. Lahat tayo should be true to our commitment. If only one nation or two or three will be committed to the Paris Agreement, we cannot solve the climate crisis. So we have to do this in concert. So going back to the question, if we are 7.1 gigawatts now, and our ambition is like 15.3 gigawatts by 2030, there has to be a rapid transition from non-renewable resources to renewable, and there has to be climate financing. Without climate financing, although I want to be more hopeful and positive, pero hindi po mangyayari yung ambition natin without financing.
Okay. Just to bridge the gap, no, minsan kasi we know all of this, just like in the survey, 75% of Pinoys have heard about climate change, and yet they cannot translate it to what we can do to reduce our emission. So as individuals, let's say, yes, there's global warming, and people will just think, okay, I'll just stay in an air-conditioned room most of the time, right? And with the newer ACs now, they're not releasing high chlorofluorocarbons, blah, blah, blah. And yet we're still using electricity, which is sourced from coal. So parang, are we supposed to shift to solar panels as parang in our individual homes or in our businesses? What would you suggest na parang part of our lifestyle? We should modify our lifestyle so that we can at least be advocates of the environment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gwen. That is exactly true. So the solutions to the climate crisis are tiered. There's global, there's national, there's regional, and there's domestic. And when going back to this question, we're talking about domestic solutions. And no small action or activity for the climate crisis is tagged as small as far as solutions is concerned. So going back to the culprit or to the etiology of or the cause of climate crisis, we're talking about CO2 emissions. And we have actually pointed out now with the figures in our hand that it's actually the generation of electricity from coal and oil, coal being the dirtiest. So any effort to reduce electricity consumption is actually a good effort. It is considered remarkable, no matter how small. We're thinking of a ripple effect. We're thinking of being an influencer in society. So, no matter how small your reduction of your electricity, it's actually a good point. So remember, for every kilowatt that you use for electricity, there's a burning of fossil fuel, and there's actually spewing of the CO2 in the atmosphere because we source it from coal. So part of the individual efforts is to reduce your electricity consumption. Of course, consumerism. And of course, another is to reduce your food waste. Remember, the food that we place in our table, on our plates, it comes from a different process. And with each process or stages, it has a carbon footprint. So if you waste your food, it's actually a double whammy. You waste the resource, and you actually contribute to the spewing of CO2 in the atmosphere. So that's basically the third solution to the climate crisis, reduction of food waste. And one thing that you can do also is, if you can afford, if you can shift to clean energy source in your home by putting solar panels, that's very remarkable. If you can also shift from driving to a from a combustion engine to an electric powered vehicle, then that's actually a good thing. If you could shift from riding a vehicle to an active transport. Mind you, before I actually bike going to the hospital just to try it, just to make my transport zero carbon on that short distance to my hospital. And it was a good thing. As long as we remember that we are reducing our carbon footprint or we are offsetting it on a daily basis, it has actually a big contribution. And with all these efforts that we do, bike lanes, and of course, tree growing events to increase the carbon sink, we have to amplify that. We have to advertise that so that it will influence others. And when this influence others, it was a ripple effect. And if all people will actually do that, that's something that we can do for planetary health and planetary care.
Okay, great. This is in line with Dr. Rasamonte's question. How about the private sectors? Are there any moves to support this advocacy?
Yes. In fact, the private sector is actually a big community as far as the climate change movement is concerned. When I was introduced, I was introduced as a climate reality leader. And thank you, PC, for sending me to train to former US Vice President Al Gore for climate reality. They are a force to reckon with, climate reality. In fact, they were the major forger with United Nations as far as the climate Paris Agreement in 2015. Back here in the Philippines, yes, there are a lot of private sector that are actually involved in conversations and forum. And if I may mention, Solar Philippines, of course, the Ayala group of companies, BPI. Guys, you could just check San Miguel. You could just check their website and what they're doing as far as influencing the government in our effort to reach our ambitions of reduction of CO2 emissions by 2030. In fact, I should say they are an integral part in coming up with the solutions and arriving at actually right numbers with our ambition by 2030 to reduce our emissions by 70%. We are thankful for the private sector. And of course, like PCP.
Yeah, but I think we have PCP also has a role to equip the members to communicate this message to their patients, to their communities. And what about in the med school? Is climate change part of the med school curriculum?
Well, for now, it is not, but it was actually the reason why we came up with the primer on climate change and health and submitted it to a commission on higher education for the medical schools and tertiary health centers, tertiary health institutions. So the gist for this is want to develop leaders, students who will become health advocates, and not just clinically, but those who are actually inclined to be environment health leaders who are actually aware and who have the robust orientation and background to the climate crisis. And we feel that the physicians are leaders in the communities, and we are heavily influencers to our patients. And I guess you'll agree with me, Dr. Gwen, that when we impart our health education to our patients really would listen to us and really follow us. And just like what we have mentioned a while ago for the domestic and individual solutions, we can share it to our patients, and these patients will share it to their community, like their subdivision groups or church groups or alumni groups or whatsoever in the social media. We just want to have the ripple effect, and we cannot do this alone. We need other agencies and we need other people to stand with us and join us in this battle against the climate crisis.
Yes, correct. Aside from planting trees, you have to plant the seeds of knowledge in all communities. Okay. So in the health sector, how can we be good stewards of the earth? You mentioned about green hospital, and of course during this pandemic we had great waste disposal of all those PPEs. So how can you educate us so that we can also instruct our hospital admins to try to shift to greener hospitals?
Yes, Healthcare Without Harm. That's our partner. Dr. Mateo is active with Healthcare Without Harm. They have this platform about global green and healthy solutions, healthy hospitals. I mean, so with every talk, I would always say that for those who are owners of hospitals, institutions, if you have the capacity and if you have the passion to join a global green and healthy hospital, please do so. It's for free, and they will actually assist you to be able to come up with your carbon footprint, to know what's your carbon footprint as the hospital, so including the clinicians and the people surrounding your hospitals. It could also tell you your waste, the waste that you have in each day and each month or each year. You can also detect, or you can check all the avenues or all the units that you can improve, so you can actually reduce your carbon footprint and everything about that. And especially with the consultants and the health people in that hospital to increase their awareness. These programs are integral so that you can be able to communicate those who are in the hospital and the staff for them to join these advocacies and to help our Mother Earth. So as healthcare individuals, we have to know that our mission to protect and of course to treat the patients, there is actually a consequence to that. There is a carbon footprint for anything that we do. When we turn on the aircon, when we turn on the electricity or the power whatsoever, there is a carbon footprint. And coming up with an awareness that there is such a thing, I think it will make you feel uncomfortable making this as a waste or not minding that these are actually just functioning or operating without the need for it, and will give you actually the passion also to teach others and to be able to let them join this advocacy that we have in order to protect the planet and to curb the climate crisis. So it's all about awareness, and it's all about communication and making things real in the real world.
Okay, there's a comment here. The single most important contribution we can make as individuals to mitigate the climate crisis is to shift to a plant-based diet and practice a zero-waste lifestyle. So what if we include the plant-based diet in our hospital food, or in our, we probably would suggest it to most of the restaurant industry or hotel and restaurant industry to offer plant-based options.
That's a good suggestion. In fact, I would be very happy about it. But I think we have to do it a little slowly, not in such a thing as not in a way that is radical, so that instead of being able to embrace it, people will actually learn that there is something that we are in our mind as a goal. So the why is actually as important as the what.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, we have to make sure that they understand what we are doing. But for those of you who have gone to Batangas, there's a resort in Batangas that actually advocates all these green initiatives. I'm not going to mention it, but there's a resort that when you go there, it's understood that you will actually be in a resort where there are green interventions, solutions, and you will not be expecting that you will be served with this type of food which are not eco-friendly. That's a good solution. But again, we have to understand that not just plant-based diet, it has to be the source of electricity generation. Not just the meal, but the source of electricity generation, to divest from dependence of fossil fuels like coal and then oil. But the problem here now is that with the 52% dependence on coal and fuel, coal is not produced here, majority. We have to import it from Indonesia and Australia. And that's what's making the electricity expensive. And it makes us vulnerable to political unrest. What if Australia and Indonesia will stop sending us coal? So what will happen to our, energy source? So with the intention to shift to renewable energy resource, clean energy sources, that is without disagreement. We have to do that, and we need to do that.
Okay, there's a comment here that they're actually looking forward to the next forum on renewable energy resources. Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, we will come up with that on another forum. And a comment from Dr. Mateo. In our hospital in Amang Rodriguez, we have been practicing meatless Mondays in our dietary, both for patients and the execom. That's a laudable initiative. Okay, so I think some of our audience would also want to know where can they join these advocacy groups, like in the PCP. How do they sign up to your committee so that they can help out and be more active in this endeavor?
Yeah, if of course, if you are an internist, please be active with your local chapter advocacy on the climate crisis. Please join the activities, especially November 8th Day of Rising. Remember the trapped heat in the atmosphere. We have to compete with the oceans because 93% will go to the oceans. The only way to compete that is to increase your carbon sink. Plant trees. I always say it. There is no such a thing as over tree planting. Palagi pong kulang yan. So compete with the oceans because while the oceans gets warmer, cyclones gets stronger. And just like what we have Carding, Odette, it's really terrifying. And if you're not an internist, there are local groups available here in the Philippines. And one of the most active group is Climate Reality Project Philippines. Just type in your Google Climate Reality Project Philippines, and you're free to join being a volunteer. And there are actually different regional representatives. I'm with Climate Reality Project Philippines with the Visayas group, but I'm actually based here in Quezon City. So I do also participate in the different forums. And not just climate reality. There are like Action Klima, of course, your LGU was an environmental group. You can actually start your own and be influencer in your society. And you can text me if you want to ramp up your decision and how you can start with those kind of propositions and groups in your local community.
Okay. Ayan, madaming na-inspire sa inyo. We can probably start with putting up signages to turn off engines at all hospital parking lots. Yes. Even in malls, no? Lalo na yung mga driver natin, we should also instruct them not to keep the engine idling while they're waiting for us, yung mga may driver. Thank you, Dr. Hadlock, for a lot of learnings. Ito, may tanong po. We are considering using solar panels for our hospital. What primary steps do we take? Thank you for this timely lecture.
Yes, in fact, the decision to put up the solar panels is laudable. So we congratulate you for that. And there are different companies online that you can actually look for and then get their quotations. What they're going to do is first to assess your electricity consumption as far as kilowatt per hour, and they will be able to determine how much kilowatts that you are going to set up for your roof or wherever you want to put it. So talk to different companies and check their quotations. It could be off-grid, it could be on-grid, it could be mixed hybrid. But now what's actually in is actually a mixed hybrid, which could be on-grid or which could be off-grid. So these are technical terms that you could actually ask those who are quoting your requirement for your hospitals. And I'm sure it's a laudable contribution, especially to the climate crisis. And if you can expand it to your homes, to your offices, to your companies, then that is actually amazing.
Okay, PCCP is investing on solar power installation for our building, says Dr. Mateo, who's the current president of the PCCP. They're already in the process of studying proposals of the providers. Yeah, and so I hope a lot of other societies will follow. And I think we're running out of time, but please watch out for the next series of fora for this particular topic. I think you got everyone interested and excited to start moving towards a healthier Earth. Okay, so let's all thank Dr. Jonathan Moses Hadlock for this very interesting, enlightening, and thought-provoking talk. And let us call on Dr. Regina Burba, member of the Board of Regents, for her closing remarks.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everybody. And I'm very honored to close this very important, relevant, and timely forum. In behalf of the Board of Regents of the Philippine College of Physicians, we really would like to thank Dr. Jonathan Moses T. Hadlock, our PCP champion for climate change. Napakaganda po ng inyong lecture, very passionate. I'm sure everybody learned a lot on how we could reduce the health impacts of climate change. And I'm sure and I hope that we were all persuaded by this very passionate lecture of Dr. Hadlock. Alam nyo, ilang beses ko na narinig yung mga lectures ni Dr. Hadlock, and each time I get really inspired. Dami ko nang na tanim na puno because of that, and I hope we can continue to do that. He walked us through the how we individually and collectively can turn around the disturbing trends of climate change. Nakakatakot yung umpisa niyang mga sinabi, di ba, yung 1.09 centigrade increase in the temperature of the atmosphere and the consequent increase in the temperature of our oceans, no? He also reminded us about the announcement of the Lancet Commission telling us that this is really a medical emergency and the greatest crisis, and how the complications can be so complex. Sa ID, I'm an infectious disease. Sa ID, he also told us that climate change disrupts various infectious diseases which make either the viruses, the organisms, or the vectors more favorably survive, no, because of the climate change. So parang maganda yung diniscuss nyo po na climate cardiology. I think that's a very doable, in a way, parang it's easier to conceptualize how we can, in our daily lives, be able to change the carbon footprint that we are leaving behind, no? So I'm very proud also that to learn that the PCP has been very responsive to the changing environment. Yung sabi niyo pong 60,000 trees at saka 39,000 audience on climate education and maybe more to come. No? So colleagues and everybody in the audience, please be reminded that we are all part of the solution. Be that influencer, no contribution is small, and be a steward of the earth. This is probably our greatest mission in our lives. So again, thank you very much po, Dr. Hadlock, and thank you everybody for your attention and your participation.
You're welcome po, ma'am. Thank you very much po. So honored po.
Okay, I think it's a wrap for today. So we're inviting you to the PCP Mid-Year Convention and for the succeeding sessions of this PCP Committee on Media and Communications. Thank you.
Bye.
The Philippine College of Physicians, through the Committee on Media Communication and Health Forum, wishes to thank its media partners, social media followers, and participants. See you again next time, here on the PCP Health Forum.